From third world countries to the huge industrial farms, there's a serious concern about the growing world population. Treffler and Treffler machines embrace the principle of innovative farming and safe food for everyone.
TGA, for example, is a very nice machine that contributes to a sustainable way of farming. Is that it allows us to no longer plow the fields, and in this way it builds up more organic matter in the soil and protects the soil for a lot of rainfall or for dry periods. And yeah, you really build up a very healthy and living soil. That's what we believe is a good way of farming.
Now we have two Trefflers, and it's nice to see that some people work without big machines or a tractor or mechanization, and the TINY Treffler is very welcome for them, because they can work with it in the garden and there's no noise or other things. We see a difference when we use the beds we use the TINY Treffler. We have less weed this season.
Hello, this is Mark Fair from MJF Farms, located here in West Bend, Iowa, and just wanted to share a little of our experience with the Treffler harrow. We purchased our first one about 3 years ago. Before that, all we had was a spike tooth McFarlane harrow, and all we did then with that was pre-merge, but we wanted to be able to do some tining after the crop was up, and so we had very good experience with the Treffler. It was an idea of getting a Hatzenbickler versus the Treffler, but I just really liked the way that the Treffler was sold to me, and that it each time the way it's designed, as you put more pressure on it, if you go over a hill or in a valley, it still has the same amount of pressure on the ground versus a spring tine. If you go over a hill, you get a lot more aggressive. So it's a lot more gentle on the growing crop. And our first couple years we had it, Mother Nature wasn't so nice to us, and we had very short windows to go in and time, and a lot of times it was really almost too wet. But it helped us improvise, actually, and we found a way to, by actually taking 5 of the tines right up above the row and zip tying them to the frame, we could almost go twice as fast and get twice as many acres done by doing that, and that those tines would just roll enough dirt in and cover the weeds that actually the next couple of years we basically parked our cultivators, deferred cultivation for a couple of weeks, and just run the Treffler, and don't run no shields on our cultivators, because usually the corn's big enough we can go without shields in the cultivator, and does a really nice job. The second year we actually ended up picking up some more ground, and I actually ended up buying a used Hatzenbickler, and so we got to run them side by side, and my 2 boys and me, and by the end of the year it was obvious that we were very happy that we got a Treffler. And probably the biggest thing is the tines on a Treffler are basically just tines. They're not a spring tine, so they're hinged, and you have a spring pulling them straight forward. So that tine goes exactly where it's being pulled. Where the Hatzenbickler, it seemed like, especially on the wheel tracks, on the springs would get lazy, and they would, instead of staying up in the row where they wanted to be, they would fall down into the trench or where the track was. So. And you didn't have the Hatzenbickler had the rolling baskets that would pivot, and so when you were trying to do, take 5 tines up and try to, with RTK, go straight and roll that corn in, the Treffler has a rigid frame, so once you determine where your row is, it did a very nice job of doing it perfect. Where the Hatzenbickler seemed once in a while the basket would roll and it would maybe move over 2 inches this way or 2 inches that way, and so. It's so easy to adjust too. It has a scale from 1 to 10, and you can put anyone in it and tell them, especially if you got 2 of them going in the same field, and you figure out what you like or what works the best, you just go to 8, sometimes in our heavy trash, sometimes you have to reduce the pressure to feather the trash out a little bit, but then you go right back to your next setting. And we just really loved it. There were spots where we had grass starting to look like a lawn, especially on soybeans. Soybeans are very, very, they just handle a lot of abuse, I guess. And there were some spots where we'd back up and maybe tine 2 times in a row, back to back. And that second time, the grass, we weakened it the first time. The second time, took the grass completely out. And it's probably the most important piece of equipment we have, almost, I would say, in our organic operation. And so I would highly recommend a Treffler. Thank you.
So let's talk about some of the tools that organic farmers use for weed management. We're standing here in a field that was planted to cereal rye about 4 or 5 days ago. And this could be any field really. This could be a wheat field, this could be any other grain field, corn or soybeans, but it's just been prepared. We planted the field 3 to 5 days ago, and there's already weeds emerging. There's already weeds that are starting to come up. You probably don't even see them. They're just starting to put their roots down, and we can use a tine weeder or a rotary hoe to control those weeds. So let's take a look at the soil and what we're talking about. So here we have a couple weeds that we can see have already started to emerge right here and here. And I'm telling you that there's probably thousands of seeds in this seed bank that have already started to germinate. And when we come through with a tine weeder or a rotary hoe, something we call blind cultivation. So we're cultivating before the crop has even emerged from the ground. So we've now finished the blind cultivation using a tine weeder, and we've only disrupted the top 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of the soil. So we've destroyed those seeds at the surface, but we didn't bring any new seeds up to the surface. And if I look, you can find some larger weeds that were pulled up, but I can actually, if I really inspect the soil, I can actually find those little tiny weeds that we saw before now sitting on the top of the soil surface with their roots exposed. So they're gonna die and will no longer become a weed issue.
So the main difference between the Treffler and the harrows I've had previously is the ease, the huge ease with which you can set up a Treffler harrow in the crop. Basically, I can try and explain the issue, but with a conventional harrow, if you want to adjust the attack of the tines on the crop, which you can do with most harrows, you can affect the angle of attack of the tines. What you have to do is rake the tines backwards or forwards, and you can do this. But whenever you adjust the tines that way with a conventional harrow, you then have to change the height of the land wheels. So the height of the land wheels and the aggressiveness of the tines interact, and that's the problem. So no matter what you do, you never quite get it right. You'll change the tines, then you have to adjust the wheels. You'll adjust the wheels, and you've got to change the tines. That was my experience. I spent a couple of years adjusting things up and down, backwards and forwards, and really didn't get on with it. So in contrast, the Treffler is just a dream. You just get in your field, you set your wheels up once, and you can adjust the tines using the hydraulic tensioning system, and that's it. So you can have your tines running over very, very gently over the crop, where you can increase the aggressivity of the tines. It doesn't affect, you don't have to fiddle around with the wheel depth. You can do it all from the cab using the hydraulic control. And that's it in a nutshell, in the simplicity of use. So the ability to reduce the aggressivity of the tines with the Treffler is remarkable. So you can have the machine running over the ground with just the weight of the tines if you want to. So you can get into crops really early, which, as we know, we all want to do. I've got a video, one of the videos here I've sent, which is weeding onions a couple of days after transplanting, which we've never been able to do because conventional harrows just pull all the plants out of the ground, and we normally have to wait. So last year we used the Treffler for the first time, and for the first time ever we didn't do any hand weeding in our onions and had a bumper crop. And that was down to the fact that it was possible to reduce the aggressivity of the tines down to nil if necessary, to go through the crop. And I think you can see on the video that the tines actually pass through the blocks of onions, so they're weeding in the line. Quite remarkable, I have to say.
It's not.
It hasn't touched the leeks.
No,
It
it's
is
all.
fantastic.
Well, the early season has basically been the rotary hoe has been the method of choice, and the rotary hoe has its place, but the problem is if it's a little damp, the rotary hoe doesn't work as well as if it's dry. And if the rotary hoe, the hoes are about 3 inches apart on there, and the tines are much closer. The rotary hoe has the points on it that only hit about every 2 inches in there, and the tine weeder is touching all the way because it's dragging on the ground the whole time. No matter when you go out there, whether it's right after, just before planting, right after planting, or 2 weeks after planting, there's still weeds out there that you can get that are in that first stage, and those are the ones you want to get at that time. Tine weeder, actually, we can go until the soybeans will be up to 12 inches tall and bushed out. We can actually still go through them. We have to slow down a little bit and change the tension a little bit on it, but we can actually still go through, and we're actually getting weeds in the row, not just between the rows, but in the row with that late in the season with the soybeans. It doesn't pull this, it doesn't lift the back end out so the back ones are not touching. It allows this to stay parallel to the ground at all times, and by staying parallel, the front tines are going in just as deep as the back tines. The best thing to do is to set it and go for a ways and get out and look at what you're doing and see if you're tearing the crop out or see if you're taking out the weeds and what you want to do, and then change the adjustments from there. Once you got onto it, you could pretty well see from the tractor as you were going the fact of whether you were getting the weeds out or whether you're going too deep or whether you're not going deep enough.
My roots are in Lesbos, Greece, where my family is farming for generations. At a young age, my parents immigrated to the US. My interest acquired in farming from a young age grew, and later I would take over the family farm and marry a farmer.
Since 1980, I was an organic farmer, the first one in this region. For me, it's important that we take our responsibility, that we build on organic agriculture.
Farmers around the world can effectively control their weeds and process their food with smart Treffler innovation.